Hello, everybody. This is Stu Smith with another To Through and After series with a very special guest, Dr. Tiffanie Moore. Doctor, thank you so much for joining me today.
Pleasure to be here.
I have to say, I get a lot of emails from publicists that send me an email blurb of like, hey, you should have this person on your podcast, or are you writing any articles that could feature the person that I'm working for. And this is one of those first ones where I actually hit reply and said, you know what, I love this story, let's have her on. This is a fantastic story. So I just want to let you know that most of those get deleted. Just nothing really pulls a little string in me, but this one was quite incredible. And before we get into the To Through and After series, the way this works for the listeners is we're going to talk to Dr. Moore about her journey from when she was a kid, when she decided she wanted to become a doctor, when she decided she was going to serve in the Navy, and now what she's doing now. So it's kind of just an evolution of your life. I think it's a great story, and I'm looking forward to you sharing that with my group, because I typically have young people on here that listen and they're considering service. They may be balancing it with certain things. They may be trying to think of what they want to do after service. Anyway, I just wanted to share your story with that group as well.
Wonderful.
So if you would, who were you, Tiffanie? Dr. Tiffanie. I guess you were Tiffanie Tate before you were Tiffanie Tate Moore. Is that correct? Okay, so Dr. Tiffanie, who are you when you were a kid, and what was that childhood like? Because what really caught my eye is that you grew up in Compton. Is that correct?
That is correct.
It's not a easy place to grow up.
That would be very correct.
So if you would tell me your story and how that worked for you, through high school.
Yes. So, I used to say, growing up in Compton was very challenging. In the words of Langston Hughes, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. Both of my parents, my mother and father, were addicted to drugs. At around the age of 2, my mother's sister, my aunt, she became my legal guardian. And my father was homeless essentially most of my life, and he later went on to go to prison, and I never met him until after he died, and I later had to claim his body from prison. But growing up, my mother was always in my life, and I watched her use drugs periodically on weekends and the times I spent with her. But growing up with my aunt was wonderful. She was a hardworking mother of 2, despite having 2 children of her own. She taught me hard work, dedication, community service. She had a very beautiful, loving spirit, a loving heart. And she kept me involved. And she herself, my mother, they were one of 12 kids. And my uncle, my second to oldest uncle, my Uncle Aman, he was an educator, and he was always promoting education. And he wanted to make sure I stayed involved in summer programs. And he kept me focused and always pushed, staying involved, staying educated. And me as a child, I always felt, well, if I was smart enough and if I focused on school enough, maybe if I got good enough grades, my mother would love me enough that she would stop doing drugs. And so if I was smart enough, she would love me more than she loved her drugs. So I focused on my education. And in elementary school, I graduated valedictorian. And so when I went to middle school, I didn't go like typical kids. I didn't start middle school with a backpack. I started with a leather briefcase. So I was that.
Nice.
I was that
Nice.
kid.
You were
And so I
ready.
was about business. Yes, I was ready to go. And so, but I prayed, I focused on God, and I joined the Christian Fellowship group, and I went to church, and I volunteered with the church mission. And my mother told me that my father was homeless, and I had compassion on him, even though I never met him. And I would volunteer on the weekends with the church mission. And as part of the church's mission, we would feed the homeless on the streets of Los Angeles, and we would feed them a bowl of beans, and I would see the people suffering and they had medical ailments. And I really wanted to feed the homeless, all the homeless. And even as a youth, I knew that that was impractical. And so I wanted to be a help to them. And so I knew that, okay, um, I could be an engineer because I loved math and science, or I could be a doctor. And so that's when the first thought of me becoming a doctor came in. Now, growing up in Compton was very difficult. There were always drive-by shootings and things like that. And there was actually one instance when I was at a home Bible study where I was actually shot
Oh,
in a
geez.
drive-by shooting. Oops. And so that was definitely not one of the best moments of my life. That happened when I was in high school.
So you
Um,
grew up, you were probably in high school in the early 90s?
yes,
There,
yes, I
yeah.
graduated high school in 1992,
Okay.
and so so yeah, that was the peak of the Crips and Bloods
Oh,
gang
yeah.
in Los Angeles. And so it was definitely a hard time to grow up in Los Angeles County during that time. And so we did not have the best as far as community security, I would say.
Right. That's a good word for it. Tell me this, how was the transition from high school into college? Where did you start your college education?
I went to UC Santa Barbara, and the funny thing is that when I applied to Santa Barbara, like I said, my aunt, bless her heart, she provided as much as she could. She graduated from high school. She never went to college. She was a cashier at the local supermarket, and she worked her way up and eventually became a manager. But she didn't really know how to help me apply for college and or anything like that, and she couldn't give me any direction. And so I applied to UC Santa Barbara because I had an aunt named Barbara. So,
Wow.
so I mean, I honestly, it was like the grace of God that I made it where I am. So I mean, it's just nothing but blessings. And so I went to UC Santa Barbara, and my experience there was absolutely excellent. They had wonderful counselors there. And I remember when I went and met with my first counselor and my graduate, my advisor, and I told him my plan. I said, I want to become a doctor. And I started with a major as English because I love to write. So, and I'd always had A's in my writing class. And so he told me, he laughed in my face. He said, sweetie, if you want to be a doctor, your major needs to be biology, not English. He said, because teachers don't make enough to pay for medical school. So you need to switch your major. I was like, oh, okay. My feelings were a little bit hurt, but I appreciated the honesty because nobody had ever really been honest with me and had told me anything. I mean, I had never really had proper adequate counseling and been told anything direct because I just hadn't. And
Well, yeah, I mean, there's not many doctors that you could probably call upon to say, hey, what do I need to do to be a doctor,
that
in your life? And
that would be correct. And so
yeah.
there were no medical doctors in my family, and I hadn't met any in my community.
Mm.
And so um, except the doctors I'd been to at the doctor's office, and they hadn't really counseled me on how to become a doctor.
Yeah, sure.
And so not at my appointments.
Right.
And so, this was the first time I was actually getting counseling. And so while I was at UC Santa Barbara, it was very educational, it was very informative. And so I was able to start going to different programs once I was a student there. And I joined the pre-health club, and I attended different pre-medical programs at UCLA and started learning how to become a doctor. So I wanted to educate myself. I was like,
Nice.
geez, it's not what you know, it's what you don't know that hurts you. So I was like, okay, I need to educate myself because I realized there was a whole lot that I did not know. Um,
Man, no kidding. Now tell me this, what was that pre-med curriculum like for you at Santa Barbara? You start off as taking more English classes, but then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm going to shift to pre-med. How was that transition for you?
oh my goodness, it was a class of about 500. And it was only like maybe two or three Black kids in the class, and one of which was my roommate. And so it was definitely different, because I went to school in Los Angeles County, where I was the majority, or at least 50-50 Latino and Blacks. And so, went to UC Santa Barbara, where we were like less than maybe 3 to 5%. So it was definitely a different perspective. Um, but overall, I worked my butt off, and it was good. It was definitely hard to graduate in 4 years.
Mm,
Um, because I know at that time most people were graduating in 5.
right.
And so I did that. I also did summer school. I did work study, because again, I was poor. I needed money.
Right. No, no,
I didn't.
that is like that is so impressive because just going to college with a very challenging major, working as well on top of it, just to help you pay for college is something that I think many people um, who are successful in their later years, can look back on that and said, I know what hard work is because that is some hard and stressful work that you did as a undergrad. And then, you went into what is probably one of the hardest, postgraduate programs
Oh
as
yeah.
well as lengthy. I mean, it's another 4 years before you're a doctor,
Oh yes.
right? And so how was that? When did you tell me about this? So you're in pre-med program and you're taking all your tests and you're making all your passing all the classes that you're supposed to take, and you find out you get accepted into med school. What was that process like, and where did you go after Santa Barbara?
Oh, after Santa Barbara, I went to Meharry Medical College in Nashville, Tennessee, and I absolutely loved it.
Mm,
Funny story is that my first year of medical school, my I decided to get a job because I was like I was struggling, and I took a job as a waitress at the Waffle House.
nice. A lot of Waffle Houses down here in the South.
Yes. And so this is right before I joined the Navy, because I was like, okay, I really need to make ends meet. And so I was like, okay, I was newly married because I got married right after I graduated from undergrad, but right before I started medical school. I was very focused, I was very regimented. So I graduated from undergrad, and right before I started medical school, I got married that summer. And so we moved to Nashville, and I was like, okay, we got to make ends meet. And he didn't have a job. And when he got a job, he wouldn't hold a job. And he took a job and he was like, it's too hard. And he quit. And that should have been a red flag right there. But no.
Oof.
So I was like, okay, I'll pick up the slack. So here I am
Wow.
here I am in medical school, you know, studying and working. So I'm pulling all the weight. And
Man.
so it's funny because like, one of the patrons at the Waffle House was like, "You should work at the Kitty Cat Club. The tips are better." And I'm like,
Oof.
"No, thank you. I'll take my $2 tip instead." So that was hilarious. And so I still remember that. That was hilarious.
So
But
there was a point there where I imagine you said, "Oh, okay, I can join the military and be a
yeah,
Navy doctor or a military doctor, and they'll help me with my college." When was that
yeah,
process happen?
yes, yes. I received the summary of how much I would owe for just that 1 year. And I was like, there has to be a better way. And there were lots of other scholarships out there that I could have taken. You know, they had the National Health Service Corps and different
Yep.
scholarships. So I could have taken a different scholarship other than a military scholarship, but I didn't want those other scholarships. I preferred to serve my country over the other scholarships because, you know, I thought about it, I prayed about it, and I liked what the military scholarship had to offer over the other ones. Just because it spoke to me more so than the other ones. Again, I love my country and I love community service. And the other ones were, you know, community service, but it wasn't serving my country. And
Sure.
so and I have a family, you know, I have family members who have served my country as well. You know, I have aunts and uncles who have served. And so I think, you know, it's fair to put your time in and give back to your country because our country has given so much to us. And so
Nice.
it's just something that we should all do.
I love it. And that's coming a lot. That's saying a lot from someone with your background. You know, to still say, you know, I love my country, right?
Yeah.
Because you know, growing up in Compton and your situation, I mean, you were very lucky that you had family members that, you know, provided a good support system for you. Um, and it sounds like, you know, that foundation right there of just, you know, having that support system was instrumental in you just moving through the process. But, you know, at the same time, sometimes the best support is your own support, right?
Yes.
That's an old Army Ranger saying. And it sounds like you also knew how to do that as well.
Yes, it was definitely pretty special.
So let's talk about how did that work? Because I've always been fascinated about this. So you're med school and you know you're going to serve. Did you start serving in the Navy as, you know, while you're going through med school, or were you able to finish med school first and then serve, and they helped you with tuition?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
And so I joined my second year of medical school. And so I guess at the end of my first year. And so the way it works with it was called the HPSP program, the Health Professions Scholarship Program. And so each section has their own version of it. The Navy, the Army, and the Air Force.
Mhm.
They each have their own version of it. And so the way in which the Navy works is that for each year that they pay for medical school, you will owe them 1 year. And so once they start paying, I had to go and do, I had to go to officer training camp
Mhm.
or officer training school. And so then each year I would have to go for a TAD for active duty. And so usually it's for like 2 weeks of TAD and then for temporary active duty orders. And so sometimes you can get that waived. Um, but then after you graduate, you can do your internship. And I did my internship at Naval Medical Center, San Diego.
Nice.
And yeah, it was great. I loved it. And so I did my internship in obstetrics and gynecology at Naval Medical Center, San Diego. Now, at the end of your internship year, you have two options. You can do your residency in the military, or you can serve the fleet as a general medical officer. So you have two options. If you do your residency in the military, you will obligate yourself a year for a year.
Oh, okay.
If you go and serve the fleet, you will pay back your obligation. And so those are the different options.
Oh, that's
Now,
interesting.
yeah. And so what I ended up doing was I went and served the fleet. That's when I went to Naval Medical Center, Naval Ambulatory Care Clinic, Port Hueneme, and served with the Seabees.
Nice.
And so, and I was stationed at Port Hueneme. And
Nice.
so, and I loved my time with the Seabees. They were great. The Naval Construction Battalion.
Mhm.
And so, and that was during the time, with the global war on terrorism. And that was during the September 11th attacks. And
Right.
so we had a lot of things going on then. And that was an emotional time. I was actually pregnant with my daughter, so it was extra emotional because of my
Wow.
pregnancy hormones.
Sure. Yeah.
So some stories there.
Yeah.
But I got to serve in a lot of different capacities while stationed there, and it was I made some lifelong friendships. I lost one of my corpsmen in Afghanistan, and we still remember him annually.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely some issues there.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But overall, I wouldn't change a thing, and I'd do it all over again.
Yeah. It's a rewarding experience, for many people, for young people who are thinking about serving, if you're thinking about medical as well. I mean, you did it one route. Many people I have seen over the years who are, 18 years old, get out of high school, just want to get out of their current situation, but they also want to be a doctor one day. They go become a medic, whether it's a Navy medic or a corpsman or Army medic. And then, they just keep plugging and they keep plugging. And next thing you know, they finished their 4-year degree while they were serving. Military helped pay for that. And then, they get accepted into medical programs all across the United States, as well as the one in DC, the USIS, Uniform Services.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I have a
medical school
who become physician assistants.
Yeah.
So I have corpsmen who go on and work in different capacities in the medical field. So absolutely, I say definitely, if you're considering joining the military, go for it. I support it 100%.
Yeah. Well, tell me this: after you did your active duty service, you went into. I saw you went into Vanderbilt.
Yes. I went back to Nashville, and I completed my residency at Vanderbilt University Medical Center, and I just picked up where I left off, and I finished my residency there, and that was fabulous because I was training with world-renowned surgeons, and that is always fabulous.
Now that is when you became an OBGYN, and that is also a surgery profession, correct?
Yes, that's when I completed my surgical specialty.
Wow.
And so, yes, that is when I had many sleepless nights.
Yeah, I can't imagine. So tell me this: do you know how many babies you have brought into this world?
Too many to count.
I think that's an amazing skill. Every I have 2 kids, and both of those doctors that made that delivery were just exceptional people that you could really tell they love their job.
Oh, absolutely.
That's all right. You're good.
Okay.
So if you would, how many years were you OBGYN?
I would say about 19 and a half.
Okay. And then what happened that made you have to stop being a OBGYN?
Unfortunately, I fell. I fell out of a trailer and I kind of took a swan dive
Oof.
um, out of the back of a trailer. And it was a fight between me and the concrete won.
Yeah.
And so I injured my wrists, my knees, and my ankle. And so I had bilateral triangular fibrocartilage perforations, and my knees were already not so great from my time in the Navy. And I injured my ankle. And so I ended up having 6 surgeries from 2016 to 2018. I had bilateral wrist surgery, 2 on my left wrist, 1 on my
Oof.
right, bilateral knee surgery, and left ankle surgery. And so the rehab was rough. And in 2016 is when I had my first 3 surgeries. After my second knee surgery, I developed postoperative pericarditis. And during that hospitalization, I had a respiratory code. My oxygen saturations fell and they had to call the code on me. And so, and that was because of the pericarditis. And they went ahead and proceeded with the right wrist surgery, but because I was on the medication for the pericarditis, I was in the right wrist brace for a prolonged period. So I ended up with a fusion of my right wrist. So I can't even bend this wrist. See how this one bends?
Oh, yeah.
I have no flexion of this wrist. So I have a frozen right wrist joint and I'm right-handed. And so I can't be a surgeon without a right wrist. And so in 2019, they medically retired me.
Gotcha.
And so I was 44 and medically retired.
Wow.
And so I was like, what do you mean? I'm like, I love my job. I'd overlapped my surgeries so that I can get back to work because I had left knee surgery and 3 months later I had right knee surgery, and 3 months later I had right wrist surgery. Instead of like doing 6 months, 6 months, 6 months, I was overlapping my surgeries in an effort to get back to work. I wasn't even stretching my surgeries out. I was trying to overlap my recovery time so I can get back to work because I loved my job. So I was shorting myself rehab for the sake of my job. And then my job essentially screwed me over.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Now, is there a way that you could still be a doctor without the surgery side? Is there things that you can do still, or are those injuries too difficult to do the other side of the job?
Because of my hands, I tend to drop things. And you kind of need your hands as an OBGYN. It's very technical.
Sure.
Now, if you were my patient and you were a woman and I did your pap smear and I dropped the speculum or I dropped your specimen, would you be okay if I said, can you get back on the table and let me do that again?
Yeah, probably not. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty rough. So how was that transition for you? Because, loss of career is, very similar to the guys that I interview on this show, making that transition out of the military for 20 years and then going into the civilian world. It's a loss, right? And this is a very similar loss, making that career transition. How was that for you?
It was devastating.
Yeah.
It sent me into a depression. I did not do well. I did not do well at all. I felt all was lost. I was in an existential crisis. I did not do well at all.
What did you find was the thing that got you out of that?
Actually, one of my former coworkers, she recognized it and she reached out to me and she was like, Tiffanie, I'm very concerned about you. I was like, good, you should be because I'm
Nice.
concerned about me. I was bad and I recognized it, but I didn't reach out for help. I did not. And that's the reality. Most doctors don't. Doctors don't reach out for help. We just sit and wallow in our self-pity. And it's
Yeah.
it's it's sad because most people, when we do get down, we don't. We just sit there and you know we wallow in it. And I would recommend that, if anybody sees somebody suffering from depression and you think that they're depressed, they probably are.
Yeah, that's a
and
good point.
and
Yeah.
if you think they're depressed, help them. Don't say, well, they'll reach out. It's not true. They're not going to. You reach out to them.
Yeah.
Um, and so, she reached out to me and it was the biggest blessing she could do. And so she helped me, she encouraged me, and I started writing. And writing is what really helped me. It helped to pull me out. Uh, Writing is what essentially saved me. I started praying. I started getting involved. I started looking within myself. I started saying, okay, you know what? I'm a mom. I have other things that I can do. I love to sing. I started singing again with my church choir.
Nice.
Um, I started being more involved in my sorority. I started doing other things. I was like, I am more than my job. So I started realizing and recognizing that, I was a person before I had this job.
Perfect. I love that. You are more than your job. And it's, a lot of veterans have that transition issue and they have to realize that as well.
Yeah.
You know,
And so,
you are more than your job.
yeah, I got caught up in that. I mean, I loved my job, and that's the problem. I loved my job. I
Yeah.
still love it. You see, I love it. I love it when I talk about it.
Yeah.
And so, and I always hope like maybe my wrist will get healed and I can go back and retrain and I can go back to it. I'm like, I believe in miracles. Um, and so I'm still young.
Yeah.
And so, it could happen. And so there's hope, but, I am more than my job. And I'm at that point where if it happens, great. And if it doesn't, great. But I am more than my job. I'm writing now. I enjoy writing. When I went to undergrad, I loved writing. My major was English. And so I love to write. Writing makes me happy. Um, and I write now. Writing is cathartic for me. It makes me feel good. It helps me get out my emotions. It is a release.
How about a physical release? Are you doing physical activity now, even
Yes.
with post injuries?
Yes. I walk. I do my half marathons. Um,
Nice.
and my last half marathon was Mount Rushmore, which was very challenging. So, despite my physical ailments, I get out there and I do it. I try to do a 5K almost every day, at least 5, 6 days a week. Because of my joints. I have a Tony Little, the gazelle. I do not own interest in that.
I
My little
do they
sister,
sell those anymore?
they do. I buy it on what is it, Amazon Prime. So yeah,
Okay.
it's low impact for people like me because
Oh,
of
it's great.
my joint issues. And so I just get on it and I chug away. And so it's great for me. And so, I walk my half marathons and so I do Zumba on the Wii. I try to do my water aerobics at LA Fitness. Um,
Nice.
so I try to stay physically fit. I try to get involved as much as possible. And so I believe that, your health, your physical health is your wealth. And, as long as you stay physically fit and you stay active, it's important. And in my book, FloweTry, I actually have a poem called Move. Let's see. If I can find it, I'll read it to you. It's really short.
Okay. So yeah, let's talk about FloweTry real quick while you search for it. It's a book of poems And it looks like there's broken up into 3 different groups of life, love, and liturgical.
Liturgical issues. So yeah,
Liturgical.
I'll read move to you real quick.
All
And
right.
so it says move because you cannot afford to move because your heart is depending on you. Move because it is what your body needs you to do. Move. Once you start to move, just keep moving. Walk, run, swim, jog, or dance. Do whatever you must do. Give good health a chance. Just move.
I love it.
So
I love it. I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna quote that one and put that in a. I'll make a meme out of it.
absolutely, you have my permission. Go for it.
That is awesome. I love that. In fact, one of the things I wrote about this week, I was writing about longevity, got on a kick of longevity, had a couple other podcast guys on there, a nutritionist and a doctor that specializes in sleep. And we just talk about longevity. And one of the biggest things there is moving more, right? Just moving a little bit more than you did yesterday. Right. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be running marathons. You just need to get up and do something.
Absolutely.
And so but that combination of writing, friendship, and physical activity, getting back to the church, all of that was a perfect balance for you to put you into the driver's seat of your life again post career change.
Yes, it really was because without it, I swear I would not be here. It was bad. It helped pull me back up. It helped pull me up by my bootstraps because I was desperate and I was on the brink of just losing it. Um, and I really needed that.
That's nice. Well, tell me this, what are you doing now in your community? I read that you were, helping with women's health issues in your community. Whether that's through a church or through community organizations. What are you doing there?
Yes, currently I'm over Target 2 for women's health and issues for my sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Eta Nu Omega chapter here in the Inland Empire. And we actually have a cardiovascular panel coming up for Pink Goes Red for Heart Health on February 5th. We're having a physician panel Zoom. And so we do various Zooms. We also publish different information on called COVID Corner and monthly medical moments to talk about different health issues periodically. And so we just try to keep people informed on different issues. And we try to educate people on asthma, cardiovascular disease, cholesterol, and any issues pertinent to women's health and general overall health.
Nice.
Also speak to different churches, and I did a Zoom on soul food, and some churches have me speak to them on just health in general.
That's wonderful. That's a great way to give back. You still feel like you have one foot in the door of your old life, but you're doing something a little bit different in your new life.
Yeah, I try to maintain my board certification. So I definitely stay abreast of all the women's health issues. I will not let that lapse so that I can stay abreast and stay informed. And so I can continue to educate women.
Oh, that's incredible. Nice work, Doc. Nice work. So let's talk about your book. What inspired you to write this book? And a unique name. Explain the name to me too. FloweTry.
Well, FloweTry, because I felt, FloweTry, it came from my heart. It's just an outflow and outpouring of all the issues, life, love, and liturgical. In life, there are so many parts of our life, whether we're interacting with other people, having issues within the community. It talks about politics. It talks about Black history. It addresses police brutality. It talks about taxes.
Yeah.
It talks a little bit about everything.
Okay.
It talks about love. It talks about anti-love. It talks about God. So if you've ever been in love, if you've ever fallen out of love, if you've ever desired a closer relationship with God, this book is for you. This book is to enlighten, entertain, and encourage. So I think this book is for anybody who has a heartbeat and is alive. And so I think that if you just want to relax, relate, release, and enjoy a good read that will kind of rhyme and just make you feel good, this book will just take you there. And so I even read it, even though I wrote it.
Okay.
And I enjoy it. And a lot of my friends and family who have read it, they keep rereading it. And some people say, I read it over and over again before I go to sleep at night because they find it fulfilling and relaxing and entertaining. And so I appreciate that because I do it. I do it
That,
too.
that's awesome because, you know, poetry has a unique style of writing that people can obviously interpret differently, but, you know, in the end, you know, depending on the poem, obviously, it can be a really good daily affirmation for you, right?
Mhm.
And you can just like, all right, this is where my mindset needs to be. And sometimes those poetry, the words in the poem can really take you to where you need to be.
Especially the liturgical section. I think it's very encouraging.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So I always like to ask people like yourself who've been on such an impressive journey, and what's next? What's next for you, Doc? Where are you going next? Because I'm so fascinated by what you've accomplished so far with your life, and you know you got so many more great years ahead of you. I'd love to hear what you think you're doing next.
I'm actually working on 2 more books.
Oh, nice, good.
Yes, I'm actually working on 2 more books. One is actually my life story.
Oh, there you go.
Yes,
We'll have you back on for that one because, like I said, you you just blew up my email whenever I read what your publicist wrote on this. So I'm very impressed by your life story.
yeah, one is my life story, and the other one is on marriage, why I stayed in an unhappy relationship for nearly 2 decades.
Sorry.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's okay.
that's a tough one. Yeah,
No, it's okay. I'm hoping it'll help some women or
yeah,
even men.
yeah.
So,
Sure, sure, absolutely. All right. Well, you know, I wish you the best of luck in this next phase of your journey. Please keep doing what you're doing because your community needs you, and it sounds like you're making a huge impact, you know, wherever you go and whatever you've done. So thanks for your service. Thanks for your continued service. And I really appreciate your time being on my two through and after series.
wonderful. Thank you for having me, Stu.
Thank you.